It's amazing. Bhavna is my batchmate from college. She is also a PhD scholar as of now in Punjab University. Then Shruti Bade, she's my student. She's working as research assistant. So just after her master's, Shruti, there were several companies, there were a lot of openings in these research labs. So she just applied to them directly through college, and she was she scheduled an interview, and that is how she got through research assistant. She's being paid pretty fine, like not great according to Mumbai standards, but I think nothing is good as compared to Mumbai. Like no amount of salary is good enough in Mumbai, so I think that's okay. Next is teaching. Now this is something that I really want to pay attention to, because when I left India or when I graduated, so I'll talk about when I graduated. So when I came out after my masters, I had net certificate with me. When I gave my net exam, I didn't even know what is the importance of net. The only reason I appeared for net exam was because it happened during the summer breaks, and I would have, just gotten to meet my friends just because of that exam. So that was the only reason I appeared for that exam. I cleared that exam, and then there was just opening in one college after my masters. I went for the interview, I cleared that interview. After 2 years, the same college in Maharashtra, they uh, took out permanent posts. So just within 2 years, I had a permanent government position in this field. So teaching is something that has, it has increased exponentially. There are so many colleges, like let alone the government colleges, the private colleges, there's so many private colleges that are coming up, and those they have forensic field. And the good part, especially I'll talk about the private colleges, the good part about the colleges is that it is, a budding field. So you have that ability, or you have that liberty to design a curriculum, to just let your brains be to explore or the different kinds of options that you can have in this field. You can create a curriculum to make it interesting, and that can help you to actually solve crime cases in real life. So when I was teaching, that was the course was, I think, 5 years old where I joined. So it was such a good opportunity for someone who was fresh out of college, because when you just recently passed out of college, you're all fresh with ideas. You have these huge thoughts in your head that I want to do something really good. And it gave me such a good opportunity, because if a course is just 5 years old, you can easily, come up with new ideas. We can do this, we can do that. You can talk to students what they want, and can bring about a change. And during that time, we even we wrote a lot of letters to change the eligibility conditions. So now there are so many recruitments that take place that put forensic science in the eligibility criteria. Initially 10 years back, I think there was absolutely no circular that said that forensic science is eligible in forensic science laboratory. So it's a huge step up now. So Kapil Verma, he's my batchmate from college. He is currently assistant professor at SGT University, Delhi. He also did I think he's doing his PhD along with teaching right now. Then is Abhijit Sarkar. He was my colleague, and he's an assistant professor in Aurangabad. Similarly, Ashish sir, he's also Jerry sir's batchmate. He's working as head and assistant professor in Nagpur. So Abhijit sir and Ashish sir, both of them, again, they are on permanent posts. Uh, we we all entered together through Maharashtra Public Service Commission, and they're all working as government employees now. Next is Namrata Deshpande. She was my student, and she's working as assistant professor at Satara. Then is digital and cyber security, one of the biggest booming fields now. Like everywhere you turn, there are so many cyber crimes that are happening. So this field has absolutely no end. And the thing is, even if you talk 10 years, 20 years down the lane, like if you have to have a look in the future, this field is just gonna grow. There is absolutely no end. Like there'll be inventions that will actually just keep expanding the limits of cyber forensics. So all these three, they're all my students. They're all from cyber. So we had a specialization in the second year. So all these three are from cyber specialization. They are working. So Manisha is working as a cyber forensic professional at Central Forensic Lab, Chandigarh. Again, as I told you, all these forensic labs, they keep issuing recruitment almost every year, as and when they have vacancies. And it's not like they have just one or two vacancies. Pretty much always they have 4 to 5 vacancies in each department. Then is Bhushan Ghode. He's working as assistant cyber forensic expert at the same place as Manisha. Then is Ganesh Deshpande. He was an amazing cyber expert, like when he was in college. And he's working as of now as cyber security analyst at SecureView Pune. So, I mean, there are currently so many private companies who are hiring forensic people to look into all the cyber issues that are taking place in the world. Next, I have blurred the pictures here because, I mean, there are some privacy issues. So I did not get the permission to actually have the pictures of these people. But I mean, this is a point, like these are the options in your career, so I had to put it. So forensic pathologists are most important if you have, like I think you guys might be studying forensic medicine. I do not know if that is there in your course or not, but if it is there, I think even any forensic pathologist, that is the only thing that he studies. The forensic medicine paper, if you have read the book KSN Reddy, that is what medical people also read. So pathologist can be associated with any hospital whenever there are some cases that are tricky or there is a chance of any criminal intent. That is when a forensic pathologist come into view. Okay. Next is forensic anthropologist. So for this, I would be very frank. In India, anthropologist, forensic anthropologist is not a much recognized field. I do not even think that there are much forensic anthropologists in India. But here what happens is, like, not just here in US, but even in UK, what happens is they keep on doing these archaeological excavations. They keep on finding these ruins and they're very much particular about all their ruins. So in such cases, whenever there is some digging that is happening, they call these forensic anthropologists who actually study those remains, those ruins, especially obviously which is related to humans if they have some ruins there. And these anthropologists help them to, find out what was the age of that person, what could be the sex, what could be the the ethnicity from where those people came, maybe the dietary preferences. So that is where anthropologists come into play here. Then these two things, I do not think they are much in use in India. I have not seen a lot of criminal profilers or forensic artists, but I think you might have seen those people when we see all the web series that there is one person who is being given all the details about the criminal or the suspect, and then he's just sketching. So that is what is a forensic artist. So again, for criminal profiler, you need to have a psychology degree. Then are private companies. As I told you, there are tons of private companies in almost all the good. Fully working as a forensic odontologist, she's actually a professor, but she always, like, if possible, if there are some cases, her opinion is always taken. Okay, so I am jobs that you can have. I have put in some emerging fields, if you can say. So you guys, if all the things that I'm telling you now, if you have any interest, you can pursue this as a research option, and you can go ahead if you can, create something that can help this field. So the most important thing in forensic science is estimating the post-mortem interval. So as of now, there are several other techniques too. We even use forensic entomology. If you guys have studied, like, the succession of insects on a dead body, on a decomposed body, we study that succession. That is forensic entomology. So similarly, we can even use microbes to study how long the body was dead, because just like insects, even microbes are very characteristic of their environment. So if we study, there may be a possibility. So all this is in research phase. There is absolutely no uh, confirmed hypothesis that this happens. Everything is in a very uh, child phase, you can say. So let's say if there is a fresh dead body, that fresh dead body would attract different kinds of microbes. Then as the body is passing through several decomposition stages, there will be several other species of microbes that can succeed those initial microbes that were there on the fresh body. Okay. So if you're able to study these microbial colonies, it may be possible for you to identify the stage of decomposition or how long a body has been dead. Now you can, have different variations. Since it's microbial community, it may possibly be dependent on the environment. It could be dependent on the season. It could be dependent on the location of body. Like if a body is found across in a grassland or in a very dry area, the microbial community would be different as compared to the microbial community that you can find in a very humid environment. Okay. So if you study these microbial decomposers, you may have a new method to identify the postmortem interval. Then is thanatotranscriptomics. Do not be afraid of such a big word. I think like thanato, it means death. So it's like obviously related, something related to death or after death. So this is pretty interesting. We all know that after we are dead, our body stops working. But there has been research, there has been studies that say that even after our body is dead, there are some genes that are activated that are working for at least 4 to 10 hours. There has been research that states this. Okay. And it is said that these genes may be those genes that were there when there was, fetal development or during the very early stages of our development. And with time, there were other dominant genes that masked the effect of these genes. And after death, because these dominant genes decay, the other genes which were not able to express themselves, they start expressing. So if we try to study the expression of these genes in several organs, we may be able to identify the postmortem interval. There is a different rate of activity with which these genes express themselves and in different organs. So their rate of expression is different with time and with respect to particular organs. So with this help, you can identify the postmortem interval. You can even find out the cause of death, because obviously, as you guys know, like if a person is under the effect of any poison or drug, the gene expressions may change. So this is something that could be of a really huge help in this field. Then is human microbiome, again, a very important and interesting field. So usually in sexual assault cases, what we do is we usually have vaginal swabs, we have pubic hairs, we go for regular testing. And many a times, as you have seen in all the famous cases, they are so easily tampered. Like most of the cases could have been solved easily and not been extended for years had there not been any tampering with the evidences. So what happens in microbiology studies is this is something that you cannot tamper with. Okay. So if there is a sexual contact between two people, there will be an exchange of microbiome, let's say the hair microbiome or the pubic hairs. These microbes, you cannot tamper with them. There is absolutely no way that you can change or modify this. So if you're able to study this, there may be a possibility for you to link a suspect and a victim. Then fingerprints, one of the most common found evidences. So I think most of the studies are already done how to collect a fingerprint. In like there was a time when we were just concerned with collecting fingerprints, analyzing them. Now there are studies that highlight how you can collect fingerprints if, let's say, there are bloodied fingerprints. So now there are studies that can tell you how you can collect those fingerprints without damaging the blood, and like you can perform your DNA or PCR studies even after collection, even after using the chemicals. So pretty much good advancement has been done. We have AFIS also. Now what we can do is, if we have to find out how long a fingerprint has been deposited on a particular surface, that is what is age of fingerprints. Okay, that can help you to place a suspect at a particular location. So there are certain metabolites that are present in your fingerprint residues. Usually, there are few studies that state that there is this palmitic acid that keeps on, moving from your fingerprints to the surface on which it is deposited. So the rate at which it is depositing on the outside surface can help you to identify the age of fingerprints. So this is again another new field that you guys can work on. And same microbial studies you can identify. So all of us, we have our own microbial flora and fauna that is present on our skin. So okay, we have our own microbial flora and fauna. The kind of food you eat, that determines the kind of sweat you have. So again, you can it may be possible that the residues that are present on fingerprints can help you to identify whether a person is a meat eater or a vegan or a vegetarian. Then in serology, a lot of work is being done in this field. Like we are using nanoparticles for all the serological tests. So rather than, the Teekman's, Takayama test, all those color tests that we do, all those, the solutions that we make. So rather than going about all that effort, all the hassle, we simply have nanoparticles. There are strips, you can just place it directly, and their sensitivity is pretty high. There are absolutely, like, there are very minimum amount of false positives. This is a pretty interesting field, and the good part about this is you can, use it in several different dimensions, not just serology. This is one thing that is very interesting for people who love to read. So if you guys, I'm pretty sure a lot of you might have read Harry Potter. And if you have not read, please read it. If you are missing something really big in your life, please read it. So most of the people do not know that J.K. Rowling, who wrote Harry Potter, also wrote Cuckoo's Calling under the name Robert Galbraith. Okay, there were some issues. She did not want to use her original name, but there was this person who actually analyzed Cuckoo's Calling, the way it was written, and he was able to say that the kind of writing that book has, it matches with J.K. Rowling's. And he was the one who said that probably J.K. Rowling is using a different name to write the book. Okay, so this is a very common thing. Like when I wanted to write my book, the publishers, they always asked whether I wanted to use my own name or someone else's name. Like I may tell my own story, and I might not want my parents to know that story, or my relatives to know that story. So I may use some other name. That's very common. So this is a pretty interesting field, the way you write, the way you are framing your sentences, whether you use big sentences or small sentences, the kind of words that you use, all these can form your own identification feature, your own characteristic. And this is something that, you can develop your own private practice. So in India, if you want to use this field, just think about how you can use, like there are so many plagiarism, when you write research papers, there are so many cases when people copy other research papers directly. So when you have to go through these, you as a forensic expert can actually start a service in which you can provide your services, saying that I'll be able to find out any flaws in the writing technique, or if that person has copied it from somewhere else. And you can, practice this thing in your regular college life. When you're given assignments, I'm pretty sure out of 50 people, there'll be 15 or 20 people who actually do the assignment. And then there are half the smart students who actually take two of like 4 or 5 assignments together, and then they pick out the good things and combine and make an assignment. I mean, that's very normal. So you can start practicing this in your college during your free time. Who has copied, who has, and please do not go to your faculty and tell them that this person has copied if you want to keep continuing that. Okay. All right. So with this, I am ending today's talk. And I really hope and I believe that you guys were able to have little hope in this field, because believe me, like, it's endless. And whenever I used to um, guide students for their master thesis, one thing I always told them was, like, just get me any topic that you want to do research on, be it biology, chemistry, physics, any topic. Like, just get me any topic, I'll relate it to forensic science. So that is the good part about forensic science. You can put this in any field and make it, like, it can make sense. It's like potatoes. The